Hello, I'm Don Clark, and what you are about to experience is one in a series of what we call Great Biographies of Bakersfield. You are about to be part of a living record of extraordinary local men and women who have lived extraordinary lives and have much of value to share with all the rest of us. This series is brought to you by the Center for Kern Political Education. The Center is a nonprofit, nonpartisan foundation made up of local citizens who are dedicated to raising up a new generation of Americans, your generation, a generation that is politically aware and therefore prepared to create an even brighter future and build an even better nation for yourselves and for your loved ones. With me now is one of those extraordinary people. He is a prominent local attorney. He is a prosperous and generous and prestigious local citizen. He is an extraordinary civic leader who has served this city and this state and even this nation with great energy and with far-reaching vision. Welcome, Milt Younger.
Don, thank you very much. I'm overwhelmed by the introduction.
Well,
I'm happy to be here, though.
Well deserved. Milt, you have so much to share, so let's get right at it and see how much we can pack into the brief time we have together. Milt, we are sitting here in the television studios of the Kern County Superintendent of Schools at 17th and L. And your entire boyhood and early life was lived within about 3 blocks of where we're sitting right now. Give us a sketch of your family and of growing up in the heart of Bakersfield.
I was born in Mercy Hospital, which is just a few blocks from here. And I was raised in Bill Lee's parking lot. That's where the family home was. The palm tree is still there. And I went to school all around here and been here basically all my life. My law office, as you know, is located across the street. And I remember a story once in the Bakersfield Californian saying, Milt Younger hasn't gone very far.
Well, geographically that may be true, but not otherwise. Milt, we talk so much today about diversity and plurality. But there was no lack of diversity in the neighborhood you grew up here in Bakersfield. Tell us about that and what the impact of that on your life.
I think it was significant. I was just a block or two from the downtown area. That is where the businesses were on 19th Street. My father had a little men's clothing store there. On either side of us were families that were Hispanic. Black families were only a couple blocks away. The Greek neighborhood was right in through there, and Greek kids were always leading me astray. But it was a mixed cultural neighborhood, and I think I'm better for that.
And in what way are you better? What did you take away as a lesson from those boyhood friendships and experiences?
Well, first, that I could play with them and get along with them, and they with me. And second, that they were strong personalities of their own with their own culture. So I remember having dinner at Nicky Stamolis' house and appreciating the Greek cooking. I remember going over to Martina's house and having dinner with them. And these were families that were very decent people, and I appreciated that.
Milt, your boyhood was marked both by some hard work and by some playful mischief. Tell us about some of the pranks and some of the hard work.
I worked in my dad's store after I got out of school every day, and that was from a pretty early age, 10, 12 years old. I was a pretty serious student, though. I played violin in the orchestra, so I had to do that, too. And I kind of got mixed up in student government a lot. I don't know why I was always a politician, but I guess I was. So that I was president of the student body at Franklin School, which is just up the street, and at Emerson, which was just across the street, and then at Kern County High School, KC, and now Bakersfield High School. So I guess that involved me quite a bit, doing things like that. Later on, when I graduated from high school, I think you know I went to Stanford Law School, and in the summertime I would roughneck in the oil fields every summer for 7 summers. I earned pretty good money doing that, enough almost to pay my way, not quite. So I got jobs like hashing, and then I was a house manager of the house, so house managers don't have to pay
We'll
much.
come to that, but I want to come back to those boyhood experiences. You shared with me once about climbing on the Bell Tower Club, Old First Baptist Church. Tell me about some of that.
Nikki led me astray. I wouldn't have done that. Well, maybe.
Well, tell me what you did. Tell
Well, if you remember, the First Baptist Church was downtown. It's now moved, but the building is still there. And after services one Sunday, I think Nikki and I were 8, 9 years old, we got into the bell tower, you know, where the bells are, and we fought the bats. It just seemed a challenge, I guess, for a 10-year-old boy to fight bats, and we must have made too much noise. And so pretty soon a police officer came, and he shined his flashlight up at us up in the bell tower, and he said, "Well, how did you kids get up there?" And we showed him there's a fixed ladder on the wall. He said, "Well, you can't come down that, it's too dangerous." Well, of course, we'd been up and down it, I don't know, 50 times. But the more he said it, the more we froze up. So he called for and got the ladder truck from the Kern County, the Bakersfield City Fire Department. They came on a Sunday afternoon and took us down. And there was a picture of us being taken down that appeared in the Californian. Now, later on, we were so successful with that effort, we tried the clock tower, which, remember, was located 17th and Chester. And we actually got into the clock tower and got up into it. Nobody caught us. We were successful. We got away with it.
Notorious and mischievous right from the beginning, Milt. You know, Milt, it became quickly apparent in your early youth and your early boyhood that you have and had some extraordinary gifts. I know it's sometimes hard to toot your own horn, but tell us about those early signs that caught everyone's attention that this is a gifted young man.
Well, I remember my first grade teacher, it was Carolyn Harris. She's the one the school is named after now. Trying to figure out what to do with me in reading, because they tested me and I was reading at the 12th grade level. And
how old were you then?
I was in the first grade.
First grade, reading at the 12th grade level.
And so they would have me do things outside of the class. Now, I guess we didn't have any particular classes for kids like that at that time. So they would figure out something for me to do, maybe in the principal's office or doing things like that. And they gave me tests along the way, in which I guess they were as puzzled as I was about how to keep me active and interested. But you know, it was an interesting time. We had great teachers at Franklin School. Incidentally, I just went back as principal for the day at Franklin School here a few days ago, and I thought the teachers we had in high school were good. I remember a 4th grade teacher that I had, Miss Fox, who was an author, and she got the idea that I could write, and she wanted to encourage that, and so she actually took me under her wing. And years afterwards, when I needed to write something, I would go back to her. Same thing in high school. Particular teachers that I'm very grateful for kind of took me under their wing, and I think were really responsible for a lot of nurturing.
Sometimes it's hard for a smart kid to be popular in school. A lot of young people today will even hide or mask their intelligence in order to fit in and not be thought too intelligent. It's not an in thing. And yet, you were able to bridge that gap, Milt. Tell us how you did that as a boy in school.
Well, I think I was a pretty friendly, outgoing kid, you know, and you know, I played well with other kids. And got to be a little, you know, fairly decent athlete. I'm not great, never was a great athlete, but enough so I could play sports with other boys and do pretty good. I think that helped me a lot. And as you know, I told you I was a political guy, so I kept getting elected to office. I don't know why, but I seemed to get along good with others.
Milt, you were known and called by those who loved you and knew you best, a Jewish prince. Tell us what that phrase means and what it carries with it for your identity.
For me, I think it meant that I knew my parents expected a lot of me, and I never wanted to let them down. And I'm not sure that motivation hasn't persisted to the present day. I was always told that I could do it. And they, of course, were deeply concerned about education. They were that kind of people. And so I was encouraged to apply to college. In fact, the only college I ever applied to was Stanford. It never occurred to me I wasn't going to get in. And they encouraged me in that. And encouraged me to do whatever I wanted. Maybe that's what a Jewish prince is, somebody who thinks that his parents think he is a prince. I think that's so important for kids to know that their parents have confidence in them and expect a lot of them, and for kids to feel like they need to live up to that. It keeps them from doing some things that they otherwise might do.
Milt, your father was very active in his faith, one of the founding members, I understand, of both synagogues that are still here in Bakersfield. How have those religious values informed your own set of values? What has been the positive and permanent and persistent thing you have drawn out of that heritage for your own life?
Well, I certainly appreciated how my parents felt about it and always wanted to live up to their ideals. They were very decent people. My father was in charge of Bakersfield Jewish Charities for 30 years or something like that. And beggars would come into the store. We had a little men's clothing store on 19th Street. And he would always take care of them. He would give them some tickets, not money, tickets to go to a cafe to get a meal. On Sunday, sometime, he brought them home for Sunday dinner, much to my mother's chagrin sometimes. But anyway, that's the kind of religious values that I think were important. That is, that we were there to do something for others. And I still think that's why I'm here. I think I'm here to do something for somebody else.
And when you say that, are we talking about a life purpose given to you by a higher being? Is that what we're talking about?
I think that I'm here to do something for others. If it's because a higher being has imbued me with that, that's the explanation. But whatever it is, I know I feel that way. And I know my parents felt that way, and I think they were a very important influence.
And now we come to the Stanford years. You're admitted and you become a fraternity man. And in fact, we discovered we're members of the same fraternity. You at Stanford, me at the University of Oregon.
Me a little bit before you.
Well, not too much, maybe. Those fraternity years and those friendships, tell us about that and what that experience meant to you. That's an experience that's lost today to so many.
Yeah, it is. And it was worthwhile for me. I'm not so sure it's great to be in fraternities on every campus. Some of them, I guess, are cut-ups and don't really encourage academics. But Theta Chi was good for me. As I said, I became house manager and then house president, and then after I got into law school, I was resident advisor. The one thing it meant to me is I was getting free room and board. But I think leadership opportunities were there that were worthwhile. I wrestled for 4 years undergraduate at Stanford, and there were other wrestlers in the house, and that was good. It's good for me to have that kind of physical activity.
You were one tough kid. Wrestling is one of the toughest disciplines, one of the toughest sports that there is out there. Tell us about, and that discipline, I believe, Milt, has persisted all through your adult life. Tell us about wrestling, about your own ongoing physical discipline and the way you've taken care of yourself physically.
Well, I think most wrestlers, and I still consider myself that, think they're the toughest ones around. We used to toss around the football players that came into the mat. Their change room was close to our wrestling room, and we used to kick them around pretty good because we were in much better shape than they were, and we knew how to handle ourselves on the mat. I always worked out. I've worked out in a gym since I was 13, 14 years old. And wrestlers run to cut weight. And so I got started running as I was wrestling. And I still, have run. I've still worked out at a gym. I did this morning.
And the positive benefits of that ongoing discipline in your life, what it's done for achieving other goals and being at your best in other ways. Tell us about that.
Well, I don't think I could work like I have worked unless I maintained a level of physical fitness. And the physical activity, I think, has been key to doing that, developing an energy level. I think a bodily immune system that works too is greatly assisted by that. I'm almost never sick. And I think that I've gotten a lot of satisfaction out of the physical activity involved of working out and running. You know, I'm a member of the Bakersfield Track Club, have been. And, I fight for the bluffs since I think they're worth preserving, and gives me another cause. I guess I'm an environmentalist because runners get out in the environment and appreciate it. But I appreciate the need to preserve the environment. We're involved in some rather important issues about that now. That's one of the elements of my personality. I just think that people ought to be given an opportunity to be physical and to be outdoors.
Milt, we come to your career. What steered you to the law? What drew you to that field?
Miss Carolyn Harris in the first grade said, "You talk too much, you'd be a good lawyer." Well, I'm not so sure that wasn't a pervasive influence, but I was always forensic, used language well. You know, I was reading when I was 3 years old, and my father had a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and believe it or not, I was opening them and reading. Not all of it, but you know, like a little kid would. But I've had that attraction to words all my life, and I've always felt confident about my ability to express myself. Language has been very important to me, and then getting involved in the causes that I've gotten involved in, not just the law, and I care a lot about what I've done in law. I mean, I represent people who are severely injured, and I try those cases in front of juries, and I've done that for 48 years now. So I care about that activity, which requires forensic ability. But all the other causes I've been involved in, the political things I've been involved in the community, the educational things I've been involved in, that ability to project my meanings with language that was sufficiently eloquent to persuade has been vital to me in my life.
Milt, there may be young people out there watching right now that would turn away from the law just because of the standard cynicism about lawyers, that, you know, down at the bottom with the used car salesman or whatever. Dispel some of that. Tell us about the nobility of the law and the satisfaction you've gained from it.
Well, what I do is represent people who are severely injured and lost a leg, brain damage, people who really have no place else to turn. And this system provides a decent way for them to be taken care of if a good lawyer represents them in an effective way. For example, in the paper, The Californian, just a couple days ago, was a picture of a client. I guess I won't mention his name, but he's severely brain damaged for the last 25 years. I represented him. He was working in the oil fields, got an electrocution, resulted in brain damage. The money that I got still keeps him alive. Still keeps him alive. That's what there is. Now, if it weren't for that, he wouldn't have it. The other source might be taxpayers and Medi-Cal, something like that. But this way he's kept in a decent environment and he's able to provide for himself. I feel very good about that. A lot of other cases like that too. A case of another brain damaged child. And this is a case that I lost. This child baby was being carried in a car that had an infant seat in it. And the car was involved in an accident. The infant seat came out from behind the seat belt. The child hit its head at the glove compartment, had brain damage that reduced her to just being able to kick her legs, and she was blind and deaf. I lost that case, but then it was appealed, and I won the case. And I then testified in the assembly about the need to have safe, dynamically tested baby seats. And partially as a result of that testimony, I think, and a testimony of others, the law was adopted requiring the use of dynamically tested baby carriers in cars. I feel very proud of that. That's the opportunities that you have if you practice law.
Well, you should. JAG, Judge Advocates Corps, a very popular television series. I don't think many people know that you served in that corps. Tell us briefly about that and what that experience meant to you.
Well, I did. I had to go into the service. I got so many deferments there to get through law school. And my distinguished military career was spent at the Presidio of San Francisco, where we refought Korea, and actually court-martialed many supply officers in the Pacific because they did things supply officers weren't supposed to do. I could tell you a story that's kind of cute if you'd like.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, here's a smart kid out of Stanford Law School, so they gave me the job of defending an Army major. I looked at the charges, and one of the charges was that he had sold a tank to the Red Chinese in Korea. So I went down to see him in the stockade, and he's there in a T-shirt and shorts and a big stomach. He was an alcoholic. And I said, "Sir, did you really sell a tank to the Red Chinese?" And he said, "Kid, who the hell else would I sell a tank to?" He's probably still in the stockade 50 years later. Anyway, my distinguished military career was not very long, and that's the kind of cases I had.
Milt, here in Bakersfield, when you returned, you had a great mentor in the law. Morris Chain, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about him, and how important is it for young people to have a strong mentor in their lives, in their chosen profession?
I think it's very important. Maury was the best-known trial lawyer in Kern County. He had won cases that were notorious. I mean, he was in the papers all the time. So I went to work for him before I got out of Stanford Law School even, and before I was a lawyer. And I watched him, and he could tell a story in a bar that everybody listened to. And he could tell a story in front of a jury that everybody listened to. And I learned that storytelling was a vital part of persuasion. So yes, I'd encourage any young person, whether it's law or some other profession, to pick out a role model and learn from that. Very important to me.
Milt, politics has been very much a part of your life. Politically, you proudly describe yourself as a liberal. By your definition, what does it mean to be a liberal?
For me, it means that I care about helping others more than anything else. That's what I'm here for. And I think a liberal is socially required to be involved in programs that help others. And that includes things like proper health care for people, proper housing, proper education. I don't want to live in a society that doesn't pay its citizens a decent living wage and opportunities of the kind that I've said. So that's what it means to me to be a liberal.
What does it mean to you, Milt, to be a conservative?
I think you can legitimately be a conservative in questioning what is presented. And I think you can properly be a conservative in clinging to values that are important to you. And there's an important role for those kind of activities. But if you're going to just be a roadblock, get out of the way and let somebody who cares about others lead.
You've been described as the godfather of the Democratic Party here in Kern County, and described affectionately that way. What does that mean?
Well, I'm proud of that. It means that I've been a longtime supporter of a party and ideas and issues that I think are important. And sure, I think the Democratic Party is in the forefront of liberal causes, the kind of causes that I think are worthwhile.
Milt, as I understand it, you have always been a deep believer in the value of the two-party system of government, having both Republicans and Democrats vying and competing for power. Why do you believe that?
Well, the checks and balances involved are very important, I think, for our democratic form of government. I had a professor at Stanford who was an authority on political parties, and two political parties, not multiple political parties. But he would frequently point out how much leavening effect the two-party system has had in maintaining order, in maintaining scrutiny of policies, and in being informative, appropriately informative to the voting citizenry. So I would be a strong advocate of maintaining the two-party system. I would be a strong advocate of getting the money out of politics. I think it's very corrupting. And probably leadership in both parties, deep down, feels the same as I do now. Young people should be given an opportunity to grow more rapidly in the party system. And that's one reason why I and Jack Brigham, who is vital, started the Center for Current Political Education, where we hope to interest bright, young high school, college students in the political party system so that we place them as interns in actual political campaigns. They work with candidates. Every political leader that we have in this county now has interns who have graduated from that system, both Republicans and Democrats. And many of those have gone on to become leaders on their own. Mike Rubio, for example, was an intern, went to work for Senator Dean Flores, then ran for supervisor, and he won. So that much of we do, we can see in concrete manner turning out to benefit the community.
Milt, you touched on what you called the corrupting power of money in politics. You've been a major donor, contributor
Yes.
to politics. You've helped to steer other major donors to other campaigns. What do you see in terms of the power of big money now controlling politics? Is it endangering the two-party system? And what do you think should be done about it?
Well, I think Common Cause, who I respect, found in a couple of studies that throughout the country, in general, the candidate that spent the most money won. We have, the spectacle of a seat for the Assembly in Kern County generating $2 million for each candidate during a campaign. That's a seat that pays, with all the benefits you can throw into it, $100,000. It doesn't make any sense. Generally speaking, it's true. Who spends the most money wins. That's bad for democracy. It's bad for progress. Yes, I'm a heavy contributor because I guess I feel I have to be a part of it and do what I can until things change. But I would be all in favor of taking the big money out of politics.
Milt, many young people watching this might say, I'm not interested in politics. I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. I don't go through news magazines. It's boring. It's a dirty business. What would you say to young people who are saying that?
It is not a dirty business. It is the reality of how things get done. And being a part of that is exciting and vital to a democracy. I would encourage young people to take part in it because of that. There's no reason to shy away from being involved in politics. In fact, there's every reason now for bright young people to take an important and an increasingly important role. To the extent that I can help them do that, I'd like to talk to them.
Milt, you have known some great political leaders personally. Just give me a thumbnail sketch. Let me run down some of them. California Governor Pat Brown.
Oh yeah, well, I was a member of those who worked for Pat Brown. Maury Chain and Pat Brown were friends. So whenever he had a campaign, why, I would get appointed to do things. And I've been a friend of the Brown family for many years. I was a friend of Jerry Brown and then worked for his sister Kathleen when she ran. And when Jerry was governor, I was one of those who recommended Gray Davis to him to be chief of staff.
What about Pat Brown? What kind of guy was he?
Oh, he's a wonderful guy. He's a very warm Irish Catholic gentleman who could talk to both parties without any problem at all. He had credibility, but he had vision. I mean, our water system, our higher education system, those are things that Pat Brown gave us. And I haven't seen creativity and courage like that in politics since.
Jerry Brown, the son. Tell us about him.
Very imaginative and still bright, capable guy. He's mayor of up there in the East Bay. Oakland, and he wants to run for Attorney General, and he's campaigning to do it. I just read, I think a couple of days ago, that he got married. So he's very vital.
California Senator Alan Cranston.
Wonderful human being who I was friends with for many years, worked on his campaigns, and just a very decent and one of the finest U.S. senators, I think, in the history of the country.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein.
She was 2 years behind me at Stanford. Beautiful girl, bright. She's generally on the right side of the issues that I think are important. She looks like she's going to stay on as senator maybe another 4 years. So she's pretty impressive.
California Senator Barbara Boxer.
Very bright, capable woman who is a shade more liberal than Dianne, and I think is right on with my issues. I think she really is a very caring person and has jumped into causes that at times are unpopular. She deserves re-election.
California Attorney General Bill Lockyer.
Well, Bill is a guy who I would support for Attorney General and would support for governor. Have supported him for Attorney General and would support him for governor. He is a self-made guy. Here's a man who, after he became elected to the Senate, state Senate, became a lawyer, and a very bright, capable lawyer. So that he's been a terrific Attorney General. You know how many things he's done now in the way of sticking up for California against the Enrons of the world, and striking out against some pretty egregious malfeasance on the part of large corporate entities. He's got guts.
The President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
I thought he was one of the most consummate and successful and effective political leaders we've ever had in the country. He brought himself down, of course, by some pretty poor judgment, but insofar as intellect, ability, effectiveness in presenting himself, and persuasion on issues, he was terrific.
Any personal anecdote that you can share about your encounter with him or conversations with him?
With Bill Clinton? Well, I remember sitting, I wasn't certainly in the inner circle, but I remember being in Los Angeles when he and his wife were there, and going over political strategies for California. He was so astute. I mean, this is a man who was not from the West, but he was more conversant with our issues in California than any Eastern politician I've ever seen.
At the time of this interview, Milt, you have now been married 49 years. In an era of easy divorces and constant breakups, this is amazing. And what I want to do is stop down right now, and we're going to take a break and bring your wife, Betty, onto the set with you. And I want to interview your wife with you for the final part of this interview.
Well, let me say something about Betty before you do that.
All right.
First, she's wonderful, creative, loyal, dedicated to the cause of art, as almost nobody else is, and has been throughout all the time I've known her. She's offered so much to this community. Some people know about it, some don't. Some people have seen her big, magnificent sculptures. Many haven't, I guess. Many don't realize what she's otherwise done as being an advocate for the arts. She was executive director of the Arts Council of Kern, president of the Arts Council of Kern. She serves on the Bakersfield Museum of Art board. She's always helping young artists. If you'll go to our house, you'll see we have young artists displayed there. So Betty deserves a lot of appreciation by this community.
I can't imagine a better introduction. Let's stop down and we'll put a chair here and let our audience meet her.
Okay.
Welcome back, and what a pleasure it is to introduce to you all the wonderful Betty Younger. And Betty, thank you so much for joining us here on the set. Milt, Betty, I want to ask you, a marriage of 41 years, 49 years.
Yeah, you're a little,
49.
Almost 50.
Almost 50.
Almost 50 now, a half a century. As we said, in a time of easy divorces and constant breakups, give us just a few secrets of your success of holding your marriage together in very busy lives that you've lived.
you're going to talk to me first.
Betty, let's hear your side of this.
Tolerating differences. You know, he's a man, I'm a woman. That's the first one. And then, but tolerating, being loyal, being encouraging, being supportive in whatever ambition my husband has had, being supporting, being behind, going to those banquets, but being right there. Loyalty is important.
Milt, on your side of this equation, what have been the key factors that have been the glue for this relationship?
I'm sure wanting to stay married, feeling like it's important to stay married is a good explanation of why people stay married for a long time. I think it's necessary to appreciate the differences that people have. I think it's important to respect those differences. I appreciate what Betty has brought into our lives in the way of art and in the way of appreciation for the promotion of art. That's something that has made a great difference in my life. When we go on vacations, we don't look for tropical beaches now. I mean, we look for centers of culture, art, music, theater.
You have raised some extraordinary daughters. Tell us about them.
Well, they were petite, young women, and they excel in sports to compensate for being petite, short. And they've been very successful, and they've won their father's pride and love and support. And they have worked their way all the way up to Olympic team riders, U.S. international riders. And they're still known all over the world. They're raising families now, but they learned so much from their father's involvement with sports and wanting to please and achieve recognition for women.
Great horses and competitive riding have been a focal point of your lives for a long time. Your Banner Farms here, where you have your horses, are famous. Tell us about what all of this has meant to you, Milt, and to see your daughters achieve at such a high level.
Did I fail to say before that Betty's been a good mother? Yeah, I think the girls' involvement in a sports activity like jumping horses has been good for them. They've stayed straight and healthy and athletic. They're now well into their 40s, as you may guess. Our oldest daughter is 49. And we have grandchildren, 5 of them. And Banner Farms has been a focal point for their lives and for the family. Betty is largely responsible for a lot of that. I mean, she's gone on the trips where they've toured the country and Europe. And
I've been a diplomat for Bakersfield, traveling through Canada and the East Coast, bringing West to the East.
Betty, you have so many accomplishments in your own right. You were the senior class president at what, San Jose State
Yes.
University? You grew up, however, in an era where women were largely confined and restricted to certain traditional roles. Tell us about what it was like to live under those restrictions and how you were able to break past them.
Education, do your homework, and have goals, long-range goals. One reason why I've been successful in art is because it was something I could do better than anything else. Art is my voice. I was always quiet, raised to be quiet. So that's why I'm expressive through my art. And I taught at Bakersfield High School and taught sculpture and special education. I really encourage education. It's your passport to anywhere.
Betty, I find your sculptures, here you are, a woman with a quiet voice, and yet I find your sculptures to be so bold and so dramatic and so strong and almost masculine in their power as I describe it to others. Is that correct, and why so?
Well, yes, I have a strong inner masculine, what do you want to say, commitment to my art, to sculpture. My sculpture, I love metal. I started in Bakersfield High School producing jewelry. So essentially, I like the power and strength of sculpture, public art. But I like the shiny, the jewelry quality, the curves, and the intrigue to make people wonder what are they looking at, to develop an interest.
Betty, Milt, the two of you have a grand vision for the arts here in Bakersfield. Milt, share with us what that vision consists of.
Well, we want to see much more attention paid to the arts in the home where we have grown up. I believe there should be a quality of life bond issue presented to the public, which allows us to have things such as a Center for the Performing Arts. We don't have anything like that here. It would make a huge amount of difference. It would be the grandest building ever built here. We would no longer be a cultural backwater to Los Angeles. The symphony would perform there. The Masterworks Chorale would perform there. Some 150 other groups, performing groups, could perform there. And it would be a wonderful cornerstone to downtown Bakersfield. I would like to see other things similar to that, though, developed as a result of this bond issue. I would like to see us have a new building for our Kern County Museum. It's housed in a shack. They do the best they can, but I'm ashamed of it. I'd like to have us have a real zoo instead of calm. Superintendent of schools, largesse, has been responsible for maintaining both of those institutions. And thank God for that. But they deserve better, and the citizens of this county deserve better than that. I'd like to see downtown revitalized. There's a plan for doing that. The Mill Creek Plan, which talks about a San Antonio type development using the canal running through Central Park all the way to California Avenue, parkways on either side. Imagine the Center for Performing Arts situated on Truxtun Avenue as the capstone of that. So that's the kind of things we'd like to see done here, and we've been working for that. And it's not going to be easy. Taxpayers here are quite concerned about another quarter a cent sales tax. But it's a small amount to pay for the future of the area.
Milt, you're a man who knows how to make your case in court, make your case here. Why is it so important, Milt, Betty, to place this emphasis on the arts in a city like Bakersfield?
The arts are how we grow. The arts are how we develop. The arts are how a community is perceived. The arts are those ennobling aspects of our life that make us different than the animals. Great ideas, beauty, that's what we can be proud of in a community. We need to encourage that. We need to work towards it. If we don't, it won't happen.
Betty?
Well, he did he explained it. I have been many years promoting and developing the Museum of Art. And now the community accepts the Museum of Art because of our education programs. And that is the way to reach people, is through education.
Yeah, unfortunately, the schools have not promoted enough education for the arts. They don't have the money to do it. Very little music, very little art actually is available in the schools. So we need to do more of that.
Milt, there may be many young people out here, high schoolers, college students, who also have grand visions, but when they run into obstacles, perhaps grow discouraged too soon and give up too soon. You know what it is to achieve a vision and to have the patience to wait out all the obstacles. Tell us what it takes to bring a vision, personally, to persevere in a vision like this and bring it to reality.
First, have the vision. Then get as much expert advice as you can about it. And I've tried to do that. We've spent money to try to get advice from those who know how to have bond issues, those who know how to build buildings, those who know how to do the planning for it. It's been done. The political leadership has to be there. And I've been, as you know, talking to our political leaders for several years along these lines. It's the same thing that results in the environment being preserved. The bluffs are a challenge right now. They were a challenge years ago when the city and the county could have done something about that. The development of the Southwest was a challenge then insofar as infrastructure is concerned. I don't think we were adequately prepared for it. I don't think the planning was there in the way it should have been. Now is the time to do the planning for the kinds of things I've just been described. And if not us, then who? And if not now, then when?
Last question, and if you've given any thought to this, Milt, Betty, what do you hope most to be remembered for?
Betty, why don't you go ahead?
I better think about it a minute.
Well, first of all,
No,
your
for-
sculpture is wonderful.
For developing an interest in art, for developing and recognizing people in downtown Bakersfield, those have been involved, the DBA, and to thank our supervisors and our city council. They all realize how important art is, buildings, paintings, music, and how necessary it is to improve our image.
I'm not sure they do, but we're working on
They're
it.
coming on.
So what a legacy. Milt, how about you?
I want to be remembered for doing something to help others.
That's been the driving theme of your life, hasn't it?
Yes.
Well, Milt and Betty Younger, you certainly deserve to be part of the great biographies of Bakersfield because you have lived extraordinary lives and have so much to share. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You know, finally, it's been said that the next best thing to being great is to have the opportunity to walk with the great, to learn from the great. And we have certainly had that opportunity here. Don't waste it. Until next time, I'm Don Clark.